Okay, I'm going to sew. Oops. And I always back stitch, and I like to sew. Well, this one is just my tack down there. But when you're sewing, always back stitch, and always just sew exactly on the line. Try not to go over. Can you see? I went over a tiny bit. You don't want to do that. I'm going to sit this down in my garbage. That's piece 2. I like to keep my sewing nice and tidy. Okay, so that's tacked down. I found my stitch ripper. I am going to pull this out a little bit, because I don't like that going into number 4 like that. Okay, great. So number 1 is on. And there it is. I'm going to grab number 2. And try to look in the light and make sure I've got that lined up. Oops. Can you see that? See the edges of my fabric is beyond the stitch lines for piece number 2. Okay, now this is where the tricky part comes in. What I'm going to do, I'm going to turn it this way. I'm going to fold. Usually I'd fold on the stitch line, but since we stitched it into number 2, I'm going to fold it like this. And my number 1 piece is already exactly how wide. The seam allowance is exactly how deep I want it to be. If it were really wonky and I wasn't that careful, I would now come and trim my number 1 piece to be a nice straight 1/4 inch. But it already is. So here's my number 2 piece. And it's exactly where I want it to be. So I'm just going to carefully, without going this way or that way, I'm just going to flip it and line it up with my number 1 seam allowance. And then I'm going to open this up, and then I'm going to just tack it down, and I'm going to stitch the line between number 1 and number 2. And on the back, this is what it looks like. With number 2 lying over top of number 1. And here we go. And you really do want to sew right on the line. You don't want to go over. And I always like to back stitch a bit. Okay. Again, I'm going to keep all of my threads nice and tidy. There we go. So now we've sewn that, and we're just going to open it up and press. And I've got my iron right there ready. And I'm just going to finger press it open. And I like to just gently slide over. There we go. So now, can you see? We've got the side, the stem, and we're going to do the other side piece. Alright, so that's how paper piecing works. As the fabric goes on the back side of your pattern, and you're sewing on the front side of your pattern. Shall we do number 3 so you can see that too? Okay, let me move this back. So, I'm going to grab my number 3 piece, and I'm going to hold it in behind, making sure I can see on the side I have the right seam allowance. If I hold it up to the light, I can also see that below I have enough fabric, above I have enough fabric, and well, I know when I cut my piece I'm going to have enough fabric on this side too. So I'm going to go like this, just holding everything. I'm going to fold this down. Usually, if I have cut this wrong, or it's too big or something, I will trim it. So it's a nice 1/4 inch, but it's already nice and straight because I was pretty careful. Where does my piece go? There we go. Now, without going right or left, I'm just going to flip you over. and line the edge up with that one. Get my pin and tack it down. Now I'm going to sew the line between 2 and 3. And again, you're going to sew right on the line. And back stitch always. Oops, sorry about that. Let's trim you too. So here you go. I have sewn my line here. I'm going to flip it over. And we're going to fold you open and iron you. There we go. And again, I like just to slide a little bit over. Not to distort the fabric, but just so the seam is pressed, the fabric's lying nice and flat. I don't like to have any bumps and puckers and stuff in my sewing. There we go. So we have the bottom row done. And now we're ready to sew on number 4. And what I'll do, this is the reason why I unpicked this one, because I want to fold it right on the line for number 4. And now you can see here, this is not quite even, since my cutting table is commandeered. I'll just eyeball this one. And I will just cut myself a nice, clean,
Here you go.
1/4 inch seam.
Here you go, Mommy.
Thank you, sweetie. Okay, so there I've got my seam cut. I'm going to grab my number 4 piece and slide it in behind, making sure that I've got my right side fabric facing out. And I'm going to line this up so that it is right where I want it to be. Now, oops, I'm not showing you, am I? Can you see in the sun there, in the light, that my fabric is sitting outside of all of the sewing lines? I'll fold it over without moving it right or left. Just going to flip, line up that edge with the nice clean edge I just cut. I'm going to tack this down in a few places because it's a bigger piece. Now you might notice if you've printed this, I'm going crooked. If you've printed this one and it doesn't quite look the same as what I'm holding, it's because I printed mine a bit smaller because I find it easier to handle for the tutorial. But this pattern is actually quite a bit bigger, so not to worry. I'm just using a smaller pattern. Okay, so now I've got that pinned down. This is what the back looks like. And I'm going to sew this line between 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so there we go. And now I'm going to flip this over and I can unfold number 4. I'm going to press that a bit and then I'm going to press it. Okay, there we go. Now we're getting the hang of it, eh? Next would be number 5, and then number 6, and when those are sewn, you're going to trim your thing and add number 7 and number 8. Think you got it? I think you do too.